shout, shout, let it all out, 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 let it all out.
Towards the start of the development of the game, we experimented with doing a lot of mixes, which were obviously 2 records, because the whole idea of being a DJ is not just playing 1 record, it's playing 2. So we did a lot of experimentation with making levels with just 1 song. So imagining you had 2 copies of the same record on both turntables. But we found it a lot more fun to be able to take 2 tracks that you know and you love and mix them up.
It's not as simple as just saying we're going to put that song in our game. This game's a lot more complicated because initially you've got a much wider pool of genres of content that you can take from, right? So you have pop and dance music and hip hop and electro, and you can also put rock tracks in there. And so we start with a huge list of content that we can potentially work with, maybe 6,000 songs that we started with, and then we just start to whittle them down. We start to group them up into areas of content. We look at how popular particular tracks are. From that list of 300 songs, we started to generate mix ideas. So we started sometimes live on the decks. We just get the tracks together, just start cutting them, just trying all the combinations. Through that process, we ended up with maybe 500 potential mixes that we felt were, you know, they were working, the tracks were in key, they were in time, there was lyrical interplay, had a good energy, and the mix brought something fresh to each individual piece of content. We then circulated that around Freestyle, around parts of Activision, just to get people's thoughts on them. And we took their feedback, and then we started building mixes, starting to get scratching, adding gameplay and balancing them. From that point, it was then a refinement again on those final mixes. Right, now let's really, really play them. Which ones are the best? Start making difficult decisions about having to lose mixes that, you know, we liked. Until we just whittled it down until we reached the soundtrack and the mix list in the final game that we were comfortable with.
The thinking behind some of the tracks that we selected was diversity, really. Trying to get as broad a spectrum of music as we possibly could. There's been no other music game with as much content and a wider scope of genres than this before. There's lots of different styles in the game. There's lots of dance music tracks, some of which are focused on lots of button presses. There's a mix with Tiesto, track by Tiesto called Elements of Life, and a track by Benny Benassi called Satisfaction. Now that is super button pressy. There's not a whole lot of scratching in there, and I think that complements the style of that music. That's the one level that I think is closest to Through the Fire and Flames from Guitar Hero 3.
So we build the levels in just a standard off-the-shelf music sequencer package. So, you know, with wave files, and we just put it all together, we piece it together, and we take scratching recorded directly off the decks in place. We sort of do takes like a vocalist. You know, we've got a section here, we want to do a scratch solo, and we play it, and Blakey does the cuts, and it's like, no, do it again. That's the take, that's the keeper. And we put that into the mix. We then really accurately mark up exactly how the DJ would perform the mix that we've constructed. So we'd have the scratching, you know, was that a forward, was that a back, was that a spin back, where did he move the fader at that point? We go and annotate that in MIDI, and then you play it and you think that bit could be a bit harder, or that didn't feel connected, and you go back and you tweak it and you play it and you tweak it and you play it, and you repeat that until you're very tired, but it's playing really well. And then we send it off to the design guys.
We take the scratch audio and the original tracks, and we basically put them into this program called Live. So A is the left deck, B is the right deck, and anything on S is on that middle stream, the red button stream, which is your sample stream, right? So this mix is Rihanna Disturbia versus the Tramps Disco Inferno. Love this mix. As you can see, we've used the a cappella of Rihanna versus the instrumental of the Tramps, right? These notes basically represent those gems you see coming down the highway. So they basically trigger off the actual visuals, and these are associated with these scratches. Right, so basically it's a case of aligning the original audio with the scratches, and then placing these little MIDI notes, which represent the actual scratch icons, which then trigger off the actual visual gems that you see in game. And that's basically how you'd create, you know, an element of gameplay in any mix.
Once that's done, we code it up, or in terminology terms, mark it up, render it into game, test it, and then it's like a massive refining process in terms of getting a good balance between great gameplay and great sonics.
Use the word you like.
It's weird at first because DJ Hair is like a brand new concept. A lot of the artists didn't know what to expect, or how their music, which is so precious to them, was going to get treated.
As soon as they got their hands on the game, within about 10 minutes, and they'd played it, they'd heard some of the mixes we put together using other people's content, they're just all like, okay, great, our content is in safe hands and this is fun, so yeah, let's do it.
What they were liked was that their craft was now going to get a platform that was a bit larger. It kind of took music to the masses in a different way. So introducing people that maybe would never have listened to a mashup and never listened to Shadow, they're now going to get to hear it in a different way.
I think a lot of the scepticism was probably to do with who we would get involved, what tracks we would use, things like that. Well, we've been lucky enough to have some of the best DJs in the world involved with our game. We've got Jazzy Jeff's contributed, we've got Daft Punk, Scratch Perverts, Z-Trip.
Something that's been really satisfying for everyone is to see the sheer excitement on all of their faces, because if you really think about it, this is an art form which people like Jazzy Jeff and Grandmaster Flash have been crafting for about 20-25 years. Do you know what I mean? And now that something like that's been turned into a product which the entire world can now engage in and experience, I think to them it's sort of like the idea of they've kind of reached the top of a mountain in a sense.
I think they were pleased that we went to them, and they were pleased to be involved with the game. They've helped us make sure that our game is credible, which I'm 100% sure it is.
The DJ wasn't meant to be a simulator, but authenticity was key as well. I mean, we wouldn't have this room full of the guys we've got if we weren't serious about it. It needed to be authentic. The mixes needed to be authentic.
One thing that's really cool is that because we've sat with them and worked with them closely on it, we've always made sure that their mixes have their kind of signature sound embedded in their mixes, so when you're playing a Shadow mix, that's a Shadow cut and you feel like Shadow when you're doing those cuts.
And I think if it hadn't been authentic, we wouldn't have had the endorsement of those guys. So I think it's a credit to the London music team that they've absolutely nailed it, and that's why we built this team in the first place, because that music is key. If it wasn't DJ music put together by DJs in that way, then it wouldn't have worked.
So don't stop, get it until you know that I heard it through the grapevine.
It's been an amazing experience, and everyone's really psyched, and everyone's just really excited to sort of see and gauge the public reaction, because at the end of the day it's all about what people think.
Most people have got a taste in different areas of music, and if it's a good example of a certain genre, they'll like it. That's certainly how everyone here feels. No one likes to feel constricted by genre or kind of baggage of a certain musical style.
I think with a DJ setup, it's quite intimidating. People would walk up to a set of decks and be like, what the hell? It looks quite intimidating. We've simplified it so people can learn about the fundamentals of DJing and what it's all about without feeling intimidated. I think everyone wants to be a DJ, I really do.
I would love for people to discover music that they might not have listened to, genres of music potentially that they may never have heard before, and for it to ignite an interest in listening to different types of music.
Real DJs, when they get their hands on DJ Hero, they'll probably breeze through, because they'll be used to crossfade movements and all that stuff. They'll probably breeze through to hardened expert, but by the time they hit expert difficulty, you have to actually move the turntable. The scratches have to be exactly how I or any of the guest DJs in the game have performed them. So you have to move the record in exactly the same way. So it can be pretty tricky. I think a lot of people are going to trip up on some of the levels that we've got. I'm convinced that our game is very true to DJ culture. It's very credible. I think the track list is, there's some very commercial stuff which is still, in my opinion, good music, and there's also some classic stuff. There's some underground stuff. There's a track by Noisier in the game. There's Eric B and Rakim, pioneers of hip hop. I think hopefully people will go away from the game and say, it's a very credible thing. It's very true to DJ culture. Musically, it's spot on, and that's what I think. That's what I think we've managed to do the game. Very proud of it, as I'm sure everyone in this room is actually.
When the game comes out in October, end of October 30th, I mean, we're really excited about it. We've had our heads down working on it for a long time. We feel really close to the product, and we just want people to enjoy it and kind of get that social experience from it. Have their friends around, have parties from it. It'd be that add-on, or that new reason to have a party where people had their Guitar Heroes parties before. We want DJ Hero parties to start happening. That would be the ultimate for us. And one of the things we've seen recently is people playing 2-player against each other, and how, I don't know, there's this real combative element to it, which we've kind of built in, but we didn't expect to be as big as it has been received. And I'm just looking forward to seeing people play it, to be honest.
At the moment, all I can say is that we're definitely concentrating on all of the downloadable content. That's our main kind of focus at the moment. We've been approaching a lot of artists and a lot of producers to get involved in that. So we've recently announced David Guetta, who's now the European ambassador for DJ Hero. We've got obviously Eminem and Jay-Z, who are the American ambassadors. And yeah, from now on it's all about basically researching into genres of music which we didn't quite touch on in the first edition, and making a load of mixes for the downloadable side of things for people to play basically. So we're looking into drum and bass a bit more, we're looking into things like minimal house and trance a bit more, and just trying to go out there and cover as many genres as possible.
In the short term, it's like making sure that we support the product with a lot of great downloadable content, not just mixes but sample packs as well, and then it's looking towards the next product and how we want to innovate, but I can't talk about that.